doorway and what kind of vulnerability they're exposing their people to, their children to. They do not know the devils that they're dealing with. You cannot share this kind of data with the US. This is disgusting. I'm so frustrated.
If you knew what you were made of, then we would save the world.
Yo, man, what the hell is going on with Kenya, man? Honestly, like, what is going on with Kenya? Where does Africa find these presidents, man? I swear, I don't know what's going on, but it just feels like a perpetual string of horror story after horror story. So, where do we start with this, man? I think we're gonna need to kind of work backwards through a lot of this BS. So I'm just gonna like hit you with a couple of headlines. All right. So at the moment, the president of Kenya is this guy William Ruto. Okay. I don't know what it is about these sellout presidents. They all look like they've come out of a cookie cutter as well. Like, he looks like all of Nigeria's worst presidents, and he looks like South Africa's only bad presidents. It's like they come out. Oh my god. Anyway, man. So yeah, it's this dude, and like it's just like I don't know where to start with him, man. I don't know where to start. So let's start here. So Kenya signs landmark health deal with the US despite data fears. So I'm just going to read this article to you so you can understand kind of what's going on here. All right. And I'll comment on it afterwards. So this is from BBC's website. Okay. So Kenya has signed a historic 5-year health agreement with the US, the first such pact since Donald Trump's administration overhauled its foreign aid program. The £2.5 billion or £1.9 billion deal is aimed at combating infectious diseases in Kenya, with similar agreements expected to be rolled out in other African countries aligned with Trump's broader foreign policy goals. If it's a deal to help combat diseases in Kenya, why has it come with this massive price tag? Like, why are you giving? It sounds to me like you're giving the Kenyan government a whole bunch of money for data to help Kenyans with disease. What is that? Really, is that what we're going with? The government to government deal aims to boost transparency and accountability, but has raised fears it could give the US real-time access to critical health databases, including sensitive patient information. Kenya's health minister, Aden Duale, sought to allay such fears, saying only de-identified aggregated data would be shared. Why do you need to share data with the US at all? What is the track record that you see with the West where you'd need to trust them or entrust them with the health, the genetic, the blood, all the biological data of your African populace? What in their track record makes you think that they're going to respond with something positive? Like, what the hell is wrong with these people? On his first day in office in January, Trump announced a freeze on foreign aid as part of a government spending review, dismantled the US Agency for International Development, and cut billions in aid to poorer countries. And by the way, I was all for the cutting of US aid. I know this is one of the things that the lefties and the Democrats tried to push. Oh, this is terrible. Oh my God, lots of people are going to die. Lots more people are going to live. Yeah? Lots more people are going to live. US aid is nothing but a funneling of money to corrupt leaders. That's what it is, essentially. US aid is like, okay, this is basically their pot of money for controlling the developing world, for funneling illegal funds to their little cronies, their little puppet leaders, their little militia, whatever it is. That's what USAID is. The idea that USAID is this benevolent thing where it's just like, oh yes, oh no, what do you mean? 2,000 people starving. USAID. You're like, get real. Get real. The US are very, very transparent about the fact that they defend their own interests. That's what their foreign policy is about, defending American interests. There's nothing benevolent about what they do. So yeah, cutting USA, that was like probably one of the best things that Donald Trump did, in my opinion. This has led to drastic reduction in the availability of some drugs in developing countries. In September, the Trump administration introduced an American First global health strategy, making aid dependent on negotiations that officials said would cut waste and advance US priorities. I think one of the things that Trump is going to learn is how many of the ingredients for US drugs come from developing nations, come from Asia and come from Africa. And actually you need US aid to to assure that trade route, to assure that you're getting that backdoor illegal ingredient. Yeah, that's what USAID actually does. So that would have been he would have, I'm sure that's come to his attention at this point, and I'm sure some of this kind of like new aid deal, I'm sure some of that is, you know, greasing the pockets of his partners in Africa. Under the deal with Kenya, the US will contribute 1.7 billion, with the Kenyan government covering 850 million and gradually taking on more responsibility. The deal targets the prevention and treatment of HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, maternal care, polio eradication, and infectious disease outbreak response and preparedness. I can't believe they're still pushing the whole HIV/AIDS thing. I'm not going to go into too much here, but do your research on HIV/AIDS, okay? Thabo Mbeki exposed that entire racket nearly 30 years ago, okay? And that's exactly what it is a racket. Do you know in the UK, HIV/AIDS, you know, this kind of like, oh, sexual disease, this, that, and the other. Do you know HIV/AIDS disappeared to near zero? And they say, oh, well, it's because, you know, sexual health went up and this, that, and the other, and people were more aware of what was taking place. Do you know that HIV/AIDS dropped to near zero? Yeah, so the rates fell through the floor till it was literally, it doesn't exist anymore. There's other STDs people worry about, but the rates of teenage pregnancy continued to climb. Yeah, so as HIV/AIDS was going down, teenage pregnancy was going up. In other words, people were having more unprotected sex, and yet the rate of HIV was falling. Now, let me ask you a logical question. How does that happen? The key is this only happened in Western nations. Okay, there's no other explanation for it other than the fact that the entire racket of HIV/AIDS, and that's exactly what it was. Thabo Mbeki already proved that AIDS, as it was, HIV is largely benign, and AIDS, as it was actually a disease that was predicated by the NZT drug. So they used to administer this drug called the NZT, and that would just basically, they'd put you on this concoction, this cocktail of drugs, and that concoction or cocktail of drugs would slowly kill the person who was taking it, or sometimes really fastly kill, just like we saw a lot of very key, very quick political deaths take place. You know, Easy E caught AIDS, died in 2 weeks. Fela Kuti caught AIDS, died in a couple of weeks. So you saw those kind of like, yeah, they use it, and then it's kind of like, wait a second, that's not really how AIDS works. And all of a sudden you got people living with AIDS lifelong, and then you got other people who everyone forgets that they had AIDS, like Magic Johnson, who just kind of like, oh yeah, didn't you have AIDS? yeah, I'm good now. It was like, what? How did that work? Is there a cure? It's like, it's an entire fugazi, okay, and it's one that they were trying to use to control the birth rate of that in Africa. They were basically trying to make people scared of having sex. I mean, there's a whole, it's really, really convoluted, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate in the comments regarding this. But I've done years worth of research on this topic, so you know that's my outlook on it. Signing the agreement with Kenya's President William Ruto, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio described it as a landmark agreement and referred to Kenya as long-standing American ally. I mean, that in itself just makes me feel sick. He praised Kenya for its role in leading and contributing to the UN-backed mission working to combat powerful gangs in Haiti. The frick, what's that got to do with anything? These monkey leaders, I swear I hate them, man. They are worse. They are worse than the white supremacists because they are the facilitators of it on the continent. If we had 5 or 10 countries willing to step forward and do just half of what Kenya has done already, it would be an extraordinary achievement, said Rubio. The Secretary of State explained that the US wanted its foreign aid to go directly to governments rather than through aid agencies and charities. I mean, that is a big red flag, isn't it? Yeah? it'd be better that we pay the governments directly rather than go through aid agencies and charities and people who are going to administer it in the way that it's supposed to be administered. Not that we should be trusting NGOs, aid agencies, or charities. None of them should get it. None of them should get it. There's just a whole line of corruption. We're not going to spend billions of dollars funding the NGO industrial complex while close and important partners like Kenya either have no role to play or have very little influence over how healthcare money is being spent, he said. I mean, that sounds magnanimous enough. But the problem is, that this is sounding more and more like a deal between governments. It's sounding more and more like you're just greasing and lining the pockets of a corrupt governance. You're literally just paying them some money for their data. Okay, we give you this money. Like, what's this? How it's gonna be administered? It's like, come on, man, it's just a copy and paste exercise, isn't it? They know exactly what they're doing. Kenya's president said the money would be used to work towards the country's priorities, such as buying modern equipment for hospitals and boosting health workforce. What we're not supposed to be doing now. I thought the deal was you're giving them data. Yeah, I thought that was the deal. So shouldn't it be all going towards? You can already see how much muddiness and how much lack of clarity there is and transparency there is in all of this. I assure you that every shilling and dollar will be spent efficiently, effectively, and accountably, Ruto added. As a Nigerian, I don't believe you. However, some Kenyans are demanding the disclosure of the full agreement, with fears that it would allow the US to view personal medical records such as HIV status, TB treatment history, and vaccination data of Kenyan patients. And this is where we're really getting to the meat and bones of it, because Kenya has a big problem with how blindly it accepts the vaccine schedules and the vaccine recommendations of, the most malevolent beings in the US. One such being is Bill Gates, who is an absolute devil, and he will get his comeuppance in this life or the next. What specific data categories are being shared? Are genomic data, disease patterns, mental health data, insurance claims, hospital records, or biometrics included? If not, why is that not explicitly written? Lawyer Willis Otieno posted on X. Okay, now let's have a look at how this has developed. Okay, Kenyan court suspends landmark US health aid deal over privacy concerns. So I was surprised to hear this, but I was happy to hear it. Look at this greedy. Anyway, let's just read this. Okay, so once again, we're on the BBC's website. So this is the latest update from basically day before yesterday. A Kenyan court has suspended the implementation of a landmark 1.9 billion health deal signed with the US last week over data privacy concerns. It follows a case filed by a consumer rights lobby seeking to stop the alleged transfer and sharing of Kenya's personal data under the agreement. The interim ruling now bars Kenyan authorities from taking any steps to put the deal into practice, insofar as it provides for or facilitates the transfer, sharing, or dissemination of medical, epidemiological, or sensitive personal health data. Obviously, this is the case. Did you notice how they didn't mention that this was a two-way deal? How the US wasn't going to be sharing its health data with Kenya? It's a one-way deal. Okay. So essentially, this is a security issue. This is like free espionage. We're going to tell you everything about our population and make them essentially vulnerable. Ultimately, do you not think that a nation like the US, where they already have so many unsolved missing persons cases, do you not think that your population would be vulnerable to someone who needed a specific organ? Some rich billionaire needed a specific organ or specific this or specific that, and you've literally given them real-time access to people with the exact, blood group, bone marrow status X, Y, and Z. Like, it beggars belief. Let's carry on anyway. Since the deal with Kenya, Donald Trump's administration has signed similar agreements with other African countries as it overhauls its foreign aid program. This is disgusting. I know Rwanda was one of them, and that Paul Kagame, obviously, he does anything that the US says because he was trained by the CIA, and he was trained in America before they went and they claimed that there was, I mean, that whole genocide in Rwanda, by the way, big question marks over what actually took place. Because what happened is there was a genocide allegedly against the Tutsis. The Hutus lost power as a result of the genocide, and it's been run by Tutsis ever since, which raises a big question mark as to what actually happened. Was it just a move to remove the Tutsi royal family and to put in this kind of like Tutsi militia? I don't know. There's a whole bunch of complications. Obviously, the good thing is in Rwanda now, I guess the only, if you could call it good thing to come out of the back of it, is that Rwandans just view themselves as the, you know, Banya Rwandan people now. And there's not that much of a focus on the Tutsi Hutu delineation. They kind of like are finding common ground in being, you know, Kenya Rwandan speakers being the Banya Rwandan people, and understanding that those social classes, perhaps in a world where the West was able to come in and exploit that divide, it's better that the divide doesn't exist, or at least it's not as poignant anymore. I haven't seen much of it at play, so it'd be interesting actually to hear from any Rwandans how much is the kind of like Tutsi Hutu divide still an issue? Is it still an issue, or is it something that is behind Rwanda now and you're just kind of like happily by the Rwandans? I'd love to hear from you. But anyway, according to Douale, the court's rulings only affected parts of the agreement on data sharing and not the entire deal. Well, that's sad. We note that the current conservatory orders are specific to the sharing of data and do not suspend the broader partnership, Douale added in a statement. Under its new global health aid strategy, the US prioritizes direct deals with governments rather than channeling funding through aid agencies. Countries are required to increase their own health spending. In the Kenya case, the US contributes 1.7 billion, with Kenyan government covering 850 million and gradually taking more responsibility. At last week's signing ceremony, the US Secretary of State Mark Rubio described it as a landmark agreement. The US has since entered into similar deals with Rwanda, Lesotho, Liberia, and Uganda. Oh God. These people do not know what kind of vulnerability they're exposing their people to, their children to. They do not know the devils that they're dealing with. You cannot share this kind of data with the US. This is disgusting. I'm so frustrated. However, many Kenyans have raised concerns that a deal could allow the US to view personal medical records such as HIV status, TB treatment history, and vaccination data. One of the groups that took the case to court, the Consumer Federation of Kenya, COFIC, argued that Kenya risked ceding strategic control of its health systems if pharmaceuticals for emerging diseases and digital infrastructure, including cloud storage of raw data, are externally controlled. Of course, the High Court agreed to bar the implementation of the deal until the full case is heard. This is exhausting. So anyway, that's the update. Kenya doing the most in the worst way, but clearly not just them. Rwanda, Lesotho, Uganda, and Liberia all signing deals with the US to hand over their health data. And to be honest with you, I find this terrifying. I really hope. Yeah. I don't know. That's all. This wasn't. I thought the news was actually better than this, but that's it. That's it. You know, Kenya, large parts of Africa are handing over health data to the US government in an effort to basically get some of that USAID money back in their coffers. Really sad. There you go.